I'm Carl Azuz. Fridays are awesome. This is CNN 10, and here's a down-the-middle explanation of what's going on today. Starting in the U.S. Capitol, it looks like another partial shutdown of the American government won't happen, at least for the time being. Congress and the president have come to an agreement on how to fund the government in the days ahead, which prevents the partial shutdown. The one that took place in December and January happened because Democrats and Republicans were divided over government spending on a wall or barrier between the U.S. and Mexico. President Donald Trump, who's said for years that a wall is necessary to better protect America, insisted that Congress approve $5.7 billion to pay for it. Democrats have called a wall expensive and unnecessary, and they insisted they would not approve the funding. In the weeks since the shutdown ended, lawmakers from both parties have been trying to work out a compromise on government funding. What they came up with includes more than $1.3 billion to build new barriers on the border. And last night, the White House said President Trump would sign the legislation. Because it falls well short of the $5.7 billion he wanted, though, the White House said the president would declare a separate national emergency to secure the funding for the border. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says declaring a national emergency would be a lawless act. The White House says it's prepared for any legal challenges to the declaration, so more partisan fighting could lie ahead. And when we produced this show, nothing had been finalized, though the House and Senate were rushing to get the compromise funding package approved. Crossing the Atlantic, we're taking you to Nigeria, a West African country that is gearing up for a major presidential election this Saturday. We say major because the country has both great importance to Africa and great struggles to overcome. Nigeria is officially a federal presidential republic. It's the largest democracy and economy on the African continent. But according to the Brookings Institution, a U.S.-based research group, Nigeria also has the world's highest number of people living in extreme poverty. It passed India in that ranking just last year. Nigeria has also struggled with violence, terrorism, and corruption. And there are concerns about potential violence damaging this election, though its votes have smoothed out since 2007. The world will be watching when Nigerians go to the polls on the 16th.
Nigeria is often described as the giant of Africa. It's the largest economy, the largest oil producer, and the most populous country in the continent. All this should mean that life is good for Nigerians, right? Well, not quite. The constant complaint from citizens is that the country's wealth just does not trickle down to the average man and woman who are struggling to make ends meet. To make matters worse, Nigeria is now the country with the most extremely poor people in the world. According to the World Poverty Clock, there are now 87 million Nigerians living in extreme poverty, which means they are surviving on less than $2 a day. How did it all go wrong? The simple answer is that Nigeria's oil wealth has been squandered, stolen, and grossly mismanaged through corruption and sheer incompetence. There's also been an overdependence on oil revenues, which once traded at $100 a barrel and crashed to $40 at its lowest price. Nigeria failed to make hay while the sun was shining, and as oil prices fell, revenues dwindled. Successive governments have promised to diversify the economy into other areas, but those industries have not really materialized, and revenue is still largely dependent on oil. Nigeria may be the biggest economy on the continent, but it's in crisis, with high levels of debt and massive overspending that analysts say is just not sustainable. With an estimated 190 million inhabitants, Nigeria is also facing a population explosion and has been projected to overtake the US to become the world's third most populous country by 2050. This population boom brings with it a ticking time bomb of unemployment and poverty, especially among those who are under 25. They make up more than 60% of society, one of the largest youth populations in the world. The lack of infrastructure, poor living conditions, inequality, and lack of jobs has led to many frustrations among this demographic, and they are clamoring for real change. When President Buhari, a former military ruler, was elected in 2015, it was the first peaceful transition of power in the country. He promised to be a new broom, offering a clean sweep of the old routine. But many have been left disillusioned and angry at the rising levels of inequality, lack of opportunities, and extreme poverty.
The technology company Amazon has canceled plans to build part of a second headquarters in New York City. Its main campus is in Seattle, Washington. About a year and a half ago, Amazon announced it would build a second headquarters, and more than 230 cities joined a competition to be the site of it. New York City and Crystal City, Virginia were two of them. Combined, they offered Amazon $2.8 billion worth of incentives, benefits like tax breaks, and they became the two places Amazon chose for its second headquarters. Amazon was expected to eventually bring 25,000 high-paying jobs to each city and tens of billions of dollars in new tax revenue. But protests started in New York. Residents didn't like their current tax dollars being spent to attract Amazon, and some were concerned that home prices would rise, making them too expensive for people who already live there. Amazon and several New York politicians blamed each other for the reasons why the project was canceled. The company says it won't reopen its search for another campus right now, but the governor of New Jersey says his state's open for business. 10-second trivia. Which of these NASA missions to Mars was launched in 2003? Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, Mars Exploration Rovers, Mars Science Laboratory, or MAVEN? The only one of these missions launched that year was that of the Exploration Rovers Spirit and Opportunity. The time for Opportunity on Mars is over. But before that's taken out of context, we're talking about a rover that's named Opportunity. It was launched in July of 2003. It landed on the Red Planet in early 2004. It was part of a $1 billion mission that included the other rover named Spirit. That machine got stuck in the sand in 2011 and eventually stopped communicating with NASA. Opportunity lasted until last June, when its communication systems also went down. NASA's tried to contact it hundreds of times, but after the space agency's latest attempt wasn't answered on Tuesday night, it said Opportunity's mission was officially over. Both rovers worked much longer than the 90 days their mission had them officially listed for. Scientists say Opportunity traveled 28 miles over the rocky, sandy surface of Mars and took more than 200,000 pictures. They say it also found evidence that suggests ancient Mars once had liquid water on it. Even without Opportunity, NASA has several other active missions around Mars. One of them is the $2.5 billion Curiosity mission, whose rover continues to roam the Red Planet. A lifelong baseball card collector recently visited a shop in Nevada and saw this. It's a 1921 Babe Ruth card. It was listed for $8, but because the shop owner thought it was a fake, he sold it for $2. Turns out it wasn't a fake. It's apparently one of the rarest baseball cards on the planet. And the collector says he's gotten 3 multi-million-dollar offers for it. He says he doesn't want to sell it, but that he will give more money to the shop owner. Now, some may say to the collector, Sultan of what are you waiting for? Don't you, Bambi, know that card is a colossus of clout and could give a big bam to your bank account? But we can't rush to judge? That would be a behemoth of a bust and a pretty Ruth thing to do anyway. Yeah, Babe Ruth puns. You know they're a hit. CNN 10 will be back next Tuesday. We're off Monday for the President's Day holiday. We'll see you right here on the 19th.